Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to TLT Talks. We have an exciting show for you today. I'm coming to you live from the beautiful Williamsburg waterfront. You can't see it past the trees, but the city's there. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Empire State and such. So as we get prepared, hey, Bali, how's it going? As we get prepared, let me tell you a little bit about our guest for today. Litvak team is on. How is it going? Edelweiss, how are you? Got some guests coming on. Here we go. The mighty himself. Yes, Litvak team, it does not get old. The mighty coming on. 3, 2, 1. Bam! There he is.
What's going on?
There he is. The mighty Rory. How's it going, sir? How's everything?
Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. It's a beautiful day out. I'm excellent. So for those of you that may not know, let me just give this guy a very brief introduction. Went to school at the University of Richmond, then went off to work at Bloomberg, and then found his calling right here at our very own Compass as a strategy and business development manager. Then crushed it for 2 years, so much so that Robert Refkin, whose standards have known to be completely and utterly unreasonable, which is what I love about him, saw how good of a job this guy was doing and brought him in as his right-hand man, his chief of staff, and then crushed that so hard that 2 years later, he is president of Compass tri-state area, something like 3,500 agents. Actually, when we prepared for this, Roy and I were catching up just before the Zoom, this Instagram, and like when we were preparing for this, it was like 2,400, and then it's like, oh no, we haven't updated yet. It's actually 3,500. Like that's the speed at which this whole thing's happening. 44 offices, 150 something employees, and then as if all that wasn't enough, he's got a newborn. So Rory, you're getting lots of sleep, lots of rest, lots of vacations, right? Like
as always, and last couple of years, there hasn't been much sleep anyway, so
That's right.
it all works.
That's right. Well, look, man, I know how fantastic you are. You and I started Compass around the same time, but tell us a little bit about your story. As you know, we've done a series over the last 8 weeks or so of seeing Compass through the eyes of the leadership team, and you should be getting as much credit as anybody else in this place for everything it's become. So why don't you give us a little bit about your background, where you're from, anything you want to share about yourself, and then we can jump into the Compass piece.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for having me. I grew up in Long Island, and I went to University of Richmond, as you said. And, when I graduated college, I came back to Manhattan, and I worked at Bloomberg. I worked at a technology startup, and, I'd actually got connected to Robert, an email. It's a funny story, through a close friend of me and my wife, and we exchanged emails. This is 2013.
Mm-hmm.
We never followed up with it. It's one of those classic, third parties, like, hey, you guys should meet.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, yeah, that'd be great. And, we're both like, hey, we're real busy. So the funny thing is, and that was probably 9 months or 10 months before I actually met with Robert and Rob Lehman and the initial team. And so I remember when we met, I was like, this guy seems really familiar. And then I went home later that night, I was going through my email, and I realized, like, oh, we were actually connected, but I didn't even pull those dots together.
Mm.
So 2014, December 1st, 2014, I'll never forget it, first day at Compass. And I remember at the time we probably had 25 employees maybe, and maybe 25, 30 agents. I think your team, Eugene, was probably half the agents. And I remember coming in and being in the best way overwhelmed, but in a good way. Like overwhelmed. Right. I was excited, overwhelmed, because I thought there was so much opportunity and so much potential. Mm. And I remember really enjoying learning so much about the business on the fly. Right. Early conversations with you, with Leonard, with Gordon, with those who were really closest to the business of real estate,
Yeah.
I think in our industry, so many people, they know our business,
Right.
but don't, because, you know, everyone at some point or another has lived in a home, has rented a home.
Right.
You know, in my case, at that point, I hadn't bought a home, but you at least have some idea of real estate. Most people know someone who's a real estate. So you think you know, and you learn more and more about the business and realize that actually it is quite a different thing. It's
Yeah.
far more complicated, far more nuanced, and far more important and impactful, I think, than you realize. And so
Yeah.
those first 2 years were really learning and sort of building while, you know, moving. I think, what do they say? It's like you're building the plane as it's flying.
Yeah. You jump out of the plane, and you build a parachute on the way down.
Down.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that.
Yeah.
And gotten the chance to work really closely with Robert over those 2 years. He, at that point, was looking to, you know, build out a team. And, you know, he's someone who is always looking to scale impact and try to do more. You know, something I picked up from him, and, you know, which led him to say, hey, you know what, I need some more resources and support around me. He was obviously a chief of staff. So he then came up with the idea of creating a chief of staff role. And so I was fortunate enough to do that for 2 years. And, you know, that was one of the best experiences of my life.
That's amazing. That's actually my first question for you. That's really cool. So you come in. I mean, again, Rob. Listen, they say I'm gonna botch the exact quote probably a little bit, but they say that a company's limitations are only bound by the imagination of the CEO or something like that, right? And Rob has anything but a small imagination. I mean, this guy is really the epitome of dream big. It's why I like love it here so much, because you know me and my, you know, I'm like, I want it all, whatever. And so to be around a guy like that and within 2 years achieve the status of, wow, I want this guy around me even more with his standards, you got to do something right. There's got to be principles. There's got to be characteristics.
Yeah.
So, you know, for the entrepreneurs that are watching, for the corporate people that are watching, what are some of those characteristics, behaviors, principles, actions that one can do that, you know, to achieve this level of success, to achieve this much of impressing someone?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I think Robert recognized really early on was the importance of codifying and communicating the values
Right.
and the characteristics that an organization has, you know, and they're not, you know, we often say that those things are not just, you know, words you put on a wall or you put on your website, you know, to feel good about your company or yourself. They really are a roadmap to success. Think about it. If you were to take a step back and you were to ask them, you know, what are your values? Those be the behaviors and the things that if you embody, you will be successful in that in that context.
Right.
And so how I think about the ones here now, the compass ones, you know, there are certainly our entrepreneurship principles, which I know you know very well. If I can get all 8, like it's dream big, move fast, obsess about opportunity, collaborate without ego, maximize strengths,
Learn from reality.
Learn from reality. I think I'm missing maybe one.
Collaborate without ego, but I think you might have said that.
That one. But those are all of those came from interactions, conversations, and natural course of working with everyone in the company. You know, and certainly those were Robert's views on how to build a high functioning team, but they were values that people around the organization embodied. You know, and you know, whether it was, you know, you've had Rob Lehman, Matt Spangler, Rini, you know, Gordon, like these are all folks at our company that all embodied those characters. But I think less the actual characteristic, what's more important is that you actually get it down on paper. Because if you can't do that, then how can you actually measure success?
Right.
Now, I would say for Robert in particular and for our company, the 3 to me that most exemplify Compass and are probably the reasons why we've been successful. I think move fast is number 1, and these aren't in order, but just in terms of the 3, move fast, we certainly have moved incredibly fast in our pursuit of this goal that we have. And I think moving quickly benefits you so many more times than it negatively impacts. I'd much rather be charged with moving fast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. For sure.
The second is learn from reality. Now that to me is for one value. And what learn from reality is learn from the world around you. Don't make things. The answers are around you. And I think that's one of sort of Robert's superpowers, if you will. About our business, rather than us coming into it and saying, well, we know how real estate works because we've talked to a few agents and we've spent time doing it. So here's what we're going to do. Why not intensively speak to the actual customer, learn about their experience, learn from those who've come before you and either figured things out or made mistakes, and take all that and use that as the foundation to build. And what I always tell our team, if we come up with a concept or a program and we just invent it out of thin air and we put it out there, there is a chance that it will be a flop, right? That it won't be impactful, that maybe it makes sense. But if you took that same idea and you went and you spent time with 100 agents asking their feedback, their input, you tested it, you saw if others and then you did it.
Yeah, it's got to have much higher likelihood.
Right. And then the last one I would just say is collaborate without ego. As an organization, I feel fortunate. I think we all feel fortunate to work in an organization that puts an emphasis on collaboration, communication, and respecting and believing in one another. And I still think it's remarkable that in an organization like ours and as big as we've grown, that we've managed to keep things like selfishness and ego, to the side. I think that's really special.
No, man, that's all spot on. Like, and to your point, if you look at like a Richard Branson, who's got in his life, I think he's built 220 companies. Only like 11 of them succeeded. I would take his level of success. This guy's a failure, right? If we look at it like conversion, right? If we looked at it on a model of conversion, he's a total failure. The guy failed over 200 times, but the 11 times he hit big. And so, actually, it's really funny to say earlier in my career, I was totally a perfectionist. It's got to be just right. It's got to be perfect. What if people think this? And by the time I got it just right, the market shifts, the economics shift, it no longer makes sense. And in trying to make it perfect, nothing ever happened. And this thing about, moving fast and learning from reality is so paramount. And then when you add into it, collaborate without ego, now if you interview the right people, and there's an entrepreneurial principle that I absolutely love, which goes like, don't fall in love with your product or service, right? You cannot fall in love with your product or service. You got to fall in love with the feedback. And so if you're moving fast, and then you're okay to learn from reality, you don't got to get it right every time. And then also it doesn't have to be just your thing, but you're okay to receive feedback. It's hard to miss. Winning becomes inevitable. It's just a matter of time, right? Which is kind of what happened here. Even with, I have so much respect for the leadership team. COVID happened and everyone had to make some really, really tough choices. And when I had Lehman on, he had said that, Compass made their layoffs in the first week, and it was a really tough decision. It was a really difficult decision, but by moving fast, they actually avoided. It would have been more layoffs down the road if they had overthought it or thought about it too long. And so, look, of course, part of being in business is making tough calls. If it was easy, everybody would do it. So that actually brings me to my next point, which is team building, right? Like actually, it comes like as we're very much embody like a company within a company kind of thing. We built our team. We're up to 18 now, which is kind of nuts to even think about. But at Compass, you were charged and tasked as chief of staff with building the team. So I'm wondering, what are some of the for anybody out there, whether it's a real estate agent looking to build a team or a different industry, or somebody looking to join a team, whatever it is. I just think you have so much. You don't have the grace yet, but you've already got the wisdom to offer some do's and don'ts of building a team. What do you look for? What's the structure? What do you look for in people? Like, how do you build a successful team?
As I think about it, by the way, the gray hair is on its way, I'm sure. Coming. But look, to me, I think there are four things that are required to build a high functioning team. And these four things are also what I always say are the four characteristics of a great manager. Right? Because, if you're building a team, by definition, you're talking about management, because you're people around you that need guidance and direction. So I think, the core four, as I call them, for excellent management and team building. Number one is you have to hire well, right? You have to hire the right people, which is the hardest of these four, because most often the people you hire are not going to work, right? Like, as I said, it's just the math behind it is such that it's very difficult, if you look at it statistically, to actually land on the vast majority of your hires. And that's and I think the reason why is because it's so difficult to actually screen for and understand what is going to make someone successful in one context versus another. The context is the thing you have to think about when hiring. And so context is, think of it this way. There's a sports analogy that's helpful. Eli Manning was, quarterback for the New York Giants for a long time, won 2 Super Bowls. Eli Manning, there is not a great athlete.
Right.
If you give Eli Manning a pair of hockey skates, I guarantee he can't skate. Give him a basketball, I guarantee he can't play basketball well. Pretty slow, and he's quite athletic. But Eli Manning is excellent at taking a semi-round ball that's about this big and throwing it down a field that's 100 yards long to where there's 11 people on one side, 11 on the other. That's football. His context is football, right? Alex Rodriguez, his context is hitting a circular ball with a round bat out of a stadium that's 400 feet, right? Context is what you're good at.
Right.
That you're good. Now, some people are good overall athletes, but and that's their context. And so you have to understand the context of your company. Some companies, the context is move fast, and build as you go, learn from reality. Some companies have a context that's total opposite. And if you bring someone who's really good in one context versus another context, you're going to run into issues. And so I think to hire well, and you have to understand the context that you're hiring for. And are the people you're talking to and the people you're interviewing, would they be successful in that environment? The second thing, you have to design the organization the right way, which means the layout. Are people in the right roles? Are they in the right roles with the right people around them, responsible for the right things? That's probably the second, sort of pothole of this journey, if you will, which is you hire the right people, but they're not in the right role, they're not doing the right thing. So that's the second. The third is you have to be able to diagnose problems. Oftentimes when building teams, it's very easy as the manager or the leader of the team to be like, oh, that's the problem. But are you really actually getting to the problem? And people will always say it's the person's fault. Like, that doesn't get it, or they didn't figure this out. But is it their fault, or is it a different issue?
Right.
Maybe it's your fault, actually.
Right.
One who was clear on what expectations were.
That's right.
The fourth one, which is you have to clarify. The job of a team leader and a manager is to every day be providing clarity. Every single context is going to shift a little. So every single day, your job is to be saying, here's what matters, here's what doesn't, here's what success looks like, here are the results we're going for. And so I think if as you're building a team, you're focused on hiring good people, designing the org in the right way, diagnosing the issues as they come up, and clarifying for your people what success looks like. If you do those four things, you'll build a high-functioning team.
Yeah, it's really good, man. It's really good. One of the things I get asked often, and one of the things that I'm challenged with often, I don't have a $1 billion bank account yet, is do you go and spend, like let's say you were looking to hire for any position, right? Like you can either go, entry level and spend the 12 to 18 to 24 months, because it really takes like a year, right? It really, for someone to really, like 3 months, they have the foundation, but for someone to really master their role, it's probably 12 to 18 months, right? And so do you go for the more economical hire and invest the 12 to 18 months, or do you, by any means necessary, taking a loan, living more meager means, do you go and spend, do you write the big check and bring in somebody with experience And then there's the whole new level, the whole extra layer of, well, if you bring somebody with the experience, are they gonna be able to collaborate with that ego, or are they gonna be like, trust me, I know what I'm doing? And so there's this whole mixing pot.
Or are they going to be willing to get their hands dirty?
That's right. So are they going to stay really high level? Exactly. And then the second piece to that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rory.
No, I was just saying, one of the things I really like about our company is that no matter the level, everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no job that is beyond anyone.
Yeah.
I've seen our most senior people, open packages and sort the mail and change light bulbs.
Yeah.
Like I still do those things. When I go visit offices, I'm still cleaning up and things. And sometimes I get into the weeds on certain things that people would probably be like, "Why are you doing that?" I think it's really important because one, it sends a message to your teams. And
that's right.
You have to be willing to do it yourself.
That's
and
right.
Those little details are how you actually know if an organization's functioning at a high level.
Yeah.
But to get back to your question, look, I think it's tough to decide whether the sort of more expensive, bigger, more experienced hire versus the less experienced, less expensive hire is better, because there have been situations where both have been wildly successful and both have failed. The one thing I will say, though, is when you find someone who is great and is the right, don't be afraid to overpay.
Mm-hmm.
Because definitionally, if they do what they're capable of, it won't be over.
Right.
And
right.
A lot of situations where people have gotten so caught up on that concept that it's actually prevented them from bringing on great people. Now, it's in reason.
Yeah, of course.
But,
you're totally right, man. I just first of all, that's the true meaning of collaborative ego. Sitting in a room and not debating someone is not collaborating with that ego. Collaborating with that ego is, will you get in the weeds? That's, I mean, case in point, like we got so much work so fast. Sarah Katz, who is our head of marketing operations, who's watching this, and Brett Compton, who's our head of rentals, both of them were like, we don't have enough agents. And they both went in the field for 6 weeks and showed apartments. Like, did weekend open houses, like that's, so to your point. And yeah, I do business coach with Keith Cunningham, who I think is like one of the most brilliant business minds ever. Wrote multiple books, whatever. And he, literally, I just had my boards this past week, and we had talked about, he's like, most people are too concerned with what they pay and not, sorry, let me rephrase it. Most people are focused too much on what they're paying and not enough on what the outcome would produce. So if I ever made you, like whoever the person is, if I made you a deal right now, you got to stroke a check for $500,000, but I can guarantee on the other side there's $1 million, everybody would stroke that check, right? There'd be no reason not to do it, but that's not the reality of the world. And so when hiring, this is one of the things that I'm getting better at all the time, is to create a scorecard, to create KPIs, to create these things, and to say, look, if I put the right person in, this is what it looks like. And if I can make this much money, then I don't really care about writing this check, because it's still a lot less than that. And if you get into that space, then it doesn't feel as scary to write the check. And now I'm writing bigger checks than I ever thought of.
That's why, and I believe that when you're hiring, you want to provide upside.
Right.
Any term or any structure with someone, significant upside potential is so important. So the obvious is that, yes, as the company does better, they do better. If they perform at a high level, they will obtain more. Yeah, of course, that makes sense. But I think there's also an element to it where you want people to invest in something that is going to align with their economic benefit, but their emotional.
Right.
And anytime you can do that, you will have people who will do incredible things.
Yeah.
What I've learned is that economics alone are only so much of a motivator. There's only so much motivation you can get out of purely around money with people who are entrepreneurial and with people who want to build things. And look, if you work in our industry, if you work in real estate, you are entrepreneurial. You want to create. Look, think about the job of real estate agent. Real estate agents don't get paid a salary.
Right.
They are purely paid on commission, but that structure attracts a certain type of person who believes in themselves and wants the upside.
That's right.
anytime you can create that alignment in a role, and sometimes it means coming up with very creative
Yeah.
compensation structures. And I always tell people, don't be beholden just because in a traditional corporate setting someone has a salary and a bonus, and that's it. Get creative. People
Right.
actually like creativity.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. They actually, one of the things we did with Keith was he gave us a test. Here's 8 things, rate an order, 1 through 8, what you think employees are after. And obviously, there's economics, this, that, other, and everyone makes the same mistake. But the top 2 things ended up being feeling safe and heard in their work environment and vision. Those ended up being way more. Economics was like, I think 7 or 8. Because if
Yeah,
the money doesn't make sense, they wouldn't even take the job, right? Like,
exactly.
Rory, I know you got a 12:30 hard stop, so one thing I forgot to do is to ask you about a fun fact, but I'm actually going to call you out on your fun fact. This guy is a total like electric guitar rock star. I've seen it in person. We should make you post something and tag all of our viewers, man. You are a menace on the guitar. And the last thing I want to ask you, growth, rapid growth, especially Compass grew at an exponential pace.
Mm-hmm.
That happened to us a couple of years ago, and so there's lots of do's and don'ts with growing very very fast. If you could just share a few, when growing fast, you really want to do lots. Some of the things to model, like this is really important. When growing fast, make sure to stay away from
Yeah.
things like this. A couple last things, and then I'll let you go because I know you got a 12:30.
So when growing fast, I think do's embrace it. Right. Sometimes you say you want to grow fast and it starts happening and it's going to get scary. You actually have to double down on it, because if you're able to grow fast, that means there's momentum.
Right.
You have to follow momentum, because momentum can do things for businesses that money and people and things can't. You can't replicate momentum.
Right.
In our business, we're very fortunate that we've been the beneficiary of momentum.
Right.
One of the first two is, you're going to go fast. Go fast.
Yeah.
Don't. Number two is make sure that you have the people that can enable you to go fast, and that gets content. Some people love a go fast environment where there is not as much clarity on what the future looks like, but it's sort of happening as it goes, and that attracts a certain type of person. Make sure you have people who are predisposed to that type of environment.
Right.
I would say and then lastly, on a do, you have to be thinking 6 months in advance, 12 months in advance, because if you're moving fast, definitionally you're going to
you got to future pace really well. Yeah.
really well. Now, on terms of the don'ts, the first don't is, don't forget to continue to clarify, because you're going to try to think 6 months, 12 months in advance. You're going to think you have a sense of what that looks like, but because things are moving so quickly, you're going to have to provide clarification for your team and for yourself on what matters. I think about when we expand to a region. I remember when we went to launch in Los Angeles. We went out there. We met with some initial agents. We met with some first sales managers. We were planning on just opening one office to start in Beverly Hills. And because we were really lucky and we were moving fast, I remember in one weekend, we were able to hire 4 amazing sales managers from Beverly Hills, Pasadena, Malibu, and Santa Barbara.
Nice.
Those 4 areas could not be further.
Nice.
So now the question becomes, okay, we have to clarify for our team. There's a new context. The context used to be 1 office. Now it's going to be 4 offices. What does success look like for that? So you have to constantly be doing that. And then lastly, I think you cannot, under any circumstances, compromise culture and those values for growth. And it's obvious, and most people would be like, yeah, no, of course. But you will be faced with those questions. Our business, that question, we could in some cases hire agents and bring agents on that might not have fit our culture, but would have allowed us to continue to grow fast. And we chose not to. And I think it was the smartest decision we ever made. And so you need to remember that if you're growing fast, you have to have core principles that you still believe, and you don't mortgage for growth, because you'll end up paying for it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I couldn't agree more with all of that. I mean, especially, we had it where we grew, like we momentum is incredible and irreplaceable. And getting the flywheel going is so hard, man. And when it's going, the last thing you ever want to do is let it stop. It's like the worst, you know, like, and yeah, and getting the right people. So right, because the more of the right people you have, the more you can leverage the thing and it goes. And you got to make sure that you're bringing on growth people, because if you're in growth mode and you're bringing on people that are looking for work-life balance, oh man, is that going to blow up?
Oh,
You
yes.
know, like, oh man, is that going to blow up?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Rory, I know you got to go. Thank you so much for your time, brother.
Thank you.
Congrats on the new kid. Congrats on all the success. Congrats on everything, man. Congrats on everything.
And I'm so lucky that you and I have been able to be on this journey for what's now 6 years.
Yeah.
I'll try to, get a video or two of a good guitar solo or song.
Good. Yeah, get it over. We'll put it up and we'll tag you.
All right.
Awesome.
Good. Thank you for having me, Eugene.
See you, Rory. Have a good one, man.
See ya.